that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon.
Hello and welcome to With Bowl and Spoon. We're here with my guest, TJ.
Hi guys.
Introduce yourself.
TJ Jackson here, the owner of Real Fungi LLC. It is a cooperative agriculture project mostly focused on wild mushrooms and some wild greens from the forests of PA and all over the country.
I met TJ at the farmer's market when I was trying to learn to like mushrooms. And, you know, not liking mushrooms is like saying you don't like, what's something else that's super
Vegetables.
varied. Yeah, because there's so many different varieties of them.
Totally.
And I felt silly and I needed to learn. And so you have helped me through my mushroom journey, and I thank you so much.
You're most welcome. You know, I think it's pretty common. You know, when we grew up, there weren't many options for mushrooms. You know, you had your rubbery mushrooms from a can, and if you were lucky, you were able to get some fresh ones at the grocery store, but they were all the same thing. Agaricus, Bosporus, so your button mushrooms, your cremini, your portobello, it's all the same thing, just different sizes and colors. We do have more options now, but in a traditional grocery store setting, you're still lucky to maybe find, 2, 3, maybe 4 varieties of mushrooms. You know, for a long time, before I started this business, I actually went to Asian markets to look for other varieties of mushrooms to eat. It's one of my earliest memories is actually going out and hunting for morels with my grandfather. And it was kind of like a magical experience, you know, an Easter egg hunt, but you know, just kind of like the grown-ups liked it too. There was a little something more to it. Just the memory of like going out there and poking around in the woods with my grandfather and my uncle and my dad, and finally finding a big patch of these morels and taking them home and battering them, because that's what they did. They like to soak them in salt water first, the old timers, because they were afraid of the bugs, and then took them out and rolled them in flour and fried them in butter until they were nice and crispy. And you know, I always kind of like pined for that flavor, and it was really hard to find and hard to get. And every year I'd go out, you know, after my grandfather quit taking me, and look for them without much success for a very long time. But I did start to find all these other mushrooms. So I'm out there looking for morels, probably at the wrong time of the year then, and finding these other mushrooms and thinking to myself, well, I'm going to try to figure out what these are. So kind of picking it apart, looking at all the identifying features, getting into some field guides, seeing if I could figure out what they were. And I started to notice that, you know, a lot of these mushrooms were mushrooms that were choice edible mushrooms, like chanterelles or black trumpets. And it occurred to me as I was like doing more research, because, you know, I kind of obsess over things when I get into them. So I'm digging, and I'm seeing that, you know, in France, for example, chanterelles and black trumpets are kind of treated with the same respect that morels are here. People go out and hunt for them every year. It's a big deal. And it just kind of, that was just like the basis of me getting an idea for doing this. You know, I think I read Paul Stamets' book, The Mushroom Cultivator, in 1993. I mean, he gets a lot of flack from people, but I have to say he was at the time my inspiration for getting into this line of work, or figuring out how to get into it, or just getting me interested in it. But yeah, that's how I got started out, and it's been a goal that I have had since I was probably in my early 20s. You know,
That is phenomenal. I always admire people that have like something that they latch onto, and then they're like, this is me, and this are going through life together.
Yep.
This is what we're doing.
The ability of life to continue itself, you know, what it actually goes into it in nature. For that to happen, for those two spores to meet up and find the perfect sterile little area to mate and produce a dikaryote and grow and consume the proper nutrients and finally fruit. I mean, it's like a 1 in a million occurrence, but it happens every day in nature. In the lab, we can control it, and we can take our two spores we want and put them together and create that dikaryote and get things going. I worked in horticulture, that's my background. I got a degree in horticulture. I managed big greenhouses for years and moved on to produce farms. Eventually got to the point where I decided I can do this without the equipment, right? I can get people good mushrooms. I've been going out there in the woods. I've been finding these awesome, tasty, high-end specialty mushrooms, and they're out there. They're out there in mass. Me and my friends have been going out and picking and finding them, but we ran into this problem too, where we didn't have them when a restaurant called us. We might have them one day and we'd make a sale and get it into a restaurant, and then they'd call us next week and we wouldn't have any. Or we'd walk in the door and they'd say, oh no, we just picked our own, and then we'd end up with 50 pounds that we just got done spending a whole day picking with no home for them. So I just thought, let's skip all this mushroom farming for now. We can get into that later. I'm gonna start to talk these guys into working with me, and we'll pull our efforts and we'll become a consistent, reliable source. And it's just a matter of time. If we just keep doing it, we might have to throw a lot of mushrooms away or dry them or save them or can them or whatever for now, but eventually we'll get that momentum.
You have folks that go out and hunt mushrooms for you and bring them back, and
Yep.
they're your like contracted
Yes.
staff, I guess, and you buy them from them and then
Yep.
sell them to your customers. I think that's a brilliant idea. So you want to tell us about the
Well, totally. A
people
lot of
that you
these
do that
guys are people who like to spend a lot of time in the woods. Maybe not so much with people, and that's okay. And they're really good at what they do. And this isn't everybody, they may have other jobs at other points in the year that they'll do, handyman jobs or, pick up some work with a buddy doing construction or whatever. But in the summer, when chanterelles are in season, they'll be out every day picking chanterelles for me. And, I like it. It makes me happy that I can give some work to these guys, and they feel independent. They're not beholden to me. If they want to, they don't have to tell me they're quitting if they don't want to do it anymore, or if they want to do more, just let me know. You can go out and work as long as you want, or don't.
You're a certified
Yes.
mushroom
I was the very first person
harvester. What is it called?
in Western Pennsylvania who is considered by the state's Department of Agriculture an expert in the identification of edible wild mushrooms. When I first started trying to research the legalities of starting this business, I came across this law and I saw the requirement for having a license, and I called the Department of Agriculture and I said, how do I get this license? And they said, well, we don't know. We've never issued one of these licenses before. I essentially spent about 2 years calling the Department of Agriculture on a somewhat weekly basis and asking them, hey, did you guys figure out how we're going to do this licensing process yet? And, they kept bumping me to another person, well, I don't know, I'll send you up the food chain a little bit, until I got to the Director of Food Safety at the Department of Agriculture, who, by the way, was an extremely nice lady, and I spent about an hour on the phone with her every week for a couple months until she decided, I think, that, I was utilizing a little too much of her time and she needed to come up with a solution for me. So she said, if you go to Michigan, they have solved this in Michigan, right? They had the big Morel Festival, and the food safety people came in and shut down the Morel Festival, which is like a huge deal for Michigan. And all the mycologists were there when this happened, and they decided they were going to solve the problem. So they created their own test. They said, you go there, take Michigan's exam, show us that you passed it, and we'll provide reciprocity. So
Have you ever had a bad experience with mushrooms?
no, I don't think I really have. I have tried a lot of questionable edible mushrooms. Mushrooms that we don't really know how edible they are, but I have had a few that I've gotten some upset stomachs kind of issues from, but nothing serious. But generally speaking, the mushrooms that will kill you are all in the same families, so you can, in general, just rule out eating that entire grouping of mushrooms and be pretty safe.
Mushrooms are having a huge moment in public right now.
Totally.
People are growing mushrooms. I saw probably 200 people on my Facebook feed with the mushroom kits that they're putting up plastic tents to make sure the moisture is enough because our houses are so dry and blah, blah.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a huge movement right now. And how's that affected your business?
It's been generally speaking good for it. People are getting more interested in them. They want to try new things. A lot of people who are getting into vegetarianism and veganism who are looking for a protein source. But it's opening up people's minds to trying new things.
Most of your product is foraged, but some of
A
it
large majority,
is
yes.
actually farmed.
Yes, I have grown a lot of mushrooms myself. Once we got the money going for the business, I got myself my flow hood, going back to the start there, and autoclaves and all the necessary stuff. And we've grown things like oysters, lion's mane, black pearl kings, chestnuts, pia pino, even enoki, beech, king trumpets, all sorts of stuff.
You mentioned protein in mushrooms, but
Totally.
also if there's protein in it, I know that changes the food safe handling
Yeah.
of the product. So it's not like carrots
No.
that you're transporting and you're shipping.
Yeah, mushrooms are, generally speaking, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30% protein by weight. They're generally speaking high in vitamin B and can be very high in vitamin D if they were exposed to sunlight. They actually absorb vitamin D from the sun like we do and then store it in their cell walls. So it's one of the few food sources where you can get vitamin D from eating a product. They're very low in calories and they have a great flavor. So, they're really an ideal substitute for meat for people who don't want to eat meat but, are trying to stick with like a vegan vegetarian diet. As far as food safety, storage, handling goes, they are very particular. That's been a huge part of my business, is figuring out how to keep this product nice and get it to market safely. So I probably spent more money on refrigeration than any other tool or piece of equipment in my business. I have, at the moment, 6 commercial refrigeration units. With enough capacity to store around 750 pounds of mushrooms at any given time.
Wow.
Now, they cannot be sealed up.
Mushrooms aren't that heavy, so that's why
No,
it's like.
but yeah, they have to breathe. You can't seal them up, so this is a thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration. Mushrooms lose 10% of their weight through evaporation every single day. So if I get 100 pounds from one of my mushroom pickers on Monday, by Tuesday I have 91 pounds. By Wednesday, I have 82 pounds, and so on and so forth. They dry out. Yeah, they're 90% water by weight. So that water evaporates, and they're a living, breathing organism. After you harvest them, they're still alive, just like other vegetables. So they're still respiring. They're, putting out their breath, so to speak, and that's causing them to evaporate. So if you were to try to seal them up into a plastic container, for example, like a Tupperware, they would pretty immediately die and start spoiling. So you can't do that. They have to breathe. So I have special containers that I've had made that fit into my coolers with about 3.5 inches of clearance on every side. They're completely ventilated. They then get lined with paper, and essentially, even with all that, I have a few days to get them to market before, they're not looking good.
What do you do this time of year when you don't have the market every week?
I still just keep doing mushrooms. Unfortunately, it's a cyclical sort of thing. The restaurants go into budget mode in the wintertime. They don't use specialty produce as much. They need to keep it tight so they can make money. The markets aren't really going. I still have a market every other week that I do, and it's nice. It keeps things going. But I still have to maintain, I'm providing a service to the community. People want my mushrooms. So for those people who still want their mushrooms in the wintertime, I have to be here. I have to be doing things. Really, ultimately, I like to have every mushroom sold within a few days of it being harvested, max. We're seeing a lot more drought in early summer here in Pennsylvania. Now, I know in theory we're supposed to get wetter as a wet climate with climate change, but what I have noticed in the last few years is that we're getting these huge droughts in May and early June, and it's becoming problematic for the crop. Luckily, we have recovered. Like last year, we ended up getting a lot of great rain through the second half of the summer, and everything perked back up. But the heat is getting, it's getting to be a little excessive as well. Things are much different.
So are morel mushrooms still your favorite?
No.
Ah.
I have graduated. I still love morels, and every year I look forward to them. It's like still my favorite thing to eat at that time of the year when they come back into season. But honestly, now I look more forward to the porcini season and the black trumpet season than anything else. Those have become my two favorite mushrooms. It's hard to find studies on this, but there have been a few very limited studies done. The ones that I have seen, for example, were regarding the vitamin D and then exposure to sun drying versus air drying, and vitamin D content in shiitakes. So sun-dried shiitakes are much higher in vitamin D content.
That
for
is
example.
super interesting. How do you know if they've been sun-dried or...
Well, you just see that's the
oven-dried
great
or-
thing about local food is you can ask the person how it was done. When you're buying stuff at the grocery store, you can read the label if it even gives you any indication, but how do you really know? Besides the fact that people are, generally speaking, more interested in the mushrooms, and a lot of them are, they got a grow bag as a gift from somebody and decided, I'm going to stop by the mushroom booth and see what's available. So that's been positive. I am focused on the foraged mushrooms, but I would say a solid 50%, if not just under that, of what I sell are cultivated mushrooms. The next big thing in mushroom, it's already kind of getting there, is the use of psilocybe mushrooms in psychotherapeutic medicine. I really firmly believe we're getting into stage 3 trials now, that within a few years we'll start to be seeing it used in a clinical setting for treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, for depression and anxiety and things like that. And I foresee at least some change on a national level where people are going to be allowed to, in most all areas of the United States, access that medicine through their therapist. I also think on a much less publicized level, we're going to start to see fabrics being produced from mushrooms. We're going to start to see bioremediation being done with mushrooms. We're going to start to see all sorts of vegan leathers and, just
leather.
all sorts of probably dyes for fabrics and, just people
I've
are
seen
experimenting
insulating
on every
bricks.
level. Insulating bricks with the
Made from
mycelium
mushrooms,
blocks.
yeah.
I think we're going to see a lot. I think it's huge. I think people are just really starting to kind of grasp the basics of what mushrooms can do and be for us. The side, my friend here in Pittsburgh has been working on a pesticide that is almost 100% effective against the spotted lanternflies.
Lanternflies.
Yes. So he went out and just searched all over for dead lanternflies and found a particular species of fungi that was infecting, colonizing, taking over these. And he put it into culture and has been running tests. And yes, it actually was effective on ticks because he tried it on ticks,
like that.
but on the spotted lanternflies. So, there's so much.
Fungi.
Fungi. That's actually the reason for the name for the business. It was like an inside joke. It's so silly, but a real fun guy. Everybody came to my booth and they told me the joke about the mushroom that walks into the bar. Hey, he's a real fun guy. But it's pronounced fungi. So I thought I'm going to name the business this just so people can mispronounce it all the time and not tell me that joke.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right, on that note, TJ, thank you so much for
Thank
meeting
you.
with me. This was such a pleasure.
I enjoyed it myself.
and I will see you at the next market.
Sounds good. I'll see you then.
With Bowl and Spoon is written, produced and hosted by Shelley Danko Day. Copy editing by Carolyn Ristow of Details Review. Original theme song was written and performed by Paul LeBreeze and Friends. You can listen to With Bowl and Spoon wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe, like, review and share. Follow us and send us questions or messages on Facebook and Instagram at With Bowl and Spoon. Thanks for listening.